guys, so a couple weeks ago I was actually down in North Carolina and I went down to this Asian grocery store that had this most amazing spinach vegetarian bao, which is basically fluffy Chinese bread wrapped around with this amazing filling inside, and it was meaty and filling but all vegetarian and all vegan. So I thought that I would give you my interpretation of these baos. So let's head over to the kitchen and then let's get started. Okay, so the following is an all-around Chinese bread bao recipe, and it is 1 1/3 of a cup of warm water combined with a teaspoon of yeast, and then you just want to let that sit for about 5 minutes just so that the yeast has time to activate, and then after which you add 3 cups of all-purpose flour, and then you just start kneading. It's a very basic and very simple recipe, and you don't have to add all of these extra things that you might see on kind of other websites or other magazines and whatnot. So because this is a bread type recipe, it does require a fair amount of kneading. I would say if you're doing it by hand, probably a good 10 minutes, and you'll know when it's kind of, pretty good, when it becomes a nice smooth ball and it doesn't really require that much flour anymore, and it doesn't really stick to the surface. So you want to just let that rest for about 30 minutes. So in a bowl in a warm area, just so that until it about doubles in size or so. So during that time, you can be preparing your filling. So I'm basically going to be chopping all of these guys up. That's a little bit of vermicelli, I have spinach, I have shiitake mushrooms, I have Chinese chives, and then some tofu. Recipe is going to be down below. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a half a block of tofu and I'm kind of make essentially a tofu crumble. This is going to serve more as, crumbled ground meat for this recipe. And then after which I'm going to add just a little bit of salt just to get some of that flavor up. And then these are about 4 shiitake mushrooms that I put in the food processor, but you can easily just chop up and ground up by hand with a knife. This is about 2 cups of spinach that I also did. And these are sweet potato starch noodles, the thicker kind that I usually use in my japchae recipes. So 2 cups of that. I think I needed to cut that a little bit more because those strips look a little bit big. And then I'm going to take about a bunch of these. So these are Chinese chives. They're a lot milder in flavor than the Western chives, and you just want to rinse them and then cut them pretty finely. They're fairly fibrous, so just make sure to keep it, in nice and small pieces. So just putting everything into the bowl, and you can already see, you just want to mix all of the ingredients around before we add our flavoring agents, but you can see how chunky and kind of meaty everything is because you have the mushrooms and you have the tofu and you have all of this really good flavor and texture from the chives and from the sweet potato noodles. Here go our flavoring agents. So I have 1 teaspoon of sesame oil followed by another teaspoon of soy sauce, and then I have about a tablespoon and a half of salt, and then also just a little bit of ginger paste, probably about a teaspoon of that. And then cornstarch, I'm going to add a couple tablespoons, so 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, and that just helps all of this bind together. Some of especially the tofu is going to release a little bit of water, so you want to just kind of capture all of that into a sauce so that it doesn't make the baos too wet later. I think I also added some 5 spice and also some white pepper, but you guys should be tasting it. Does it need more salt, etc., etc.? Okay, so this is the dough. You can see how big it's gotten, almost 2 times in size, and you can kind of test if you press down and it doesn't kind of spring back up. This guy's gonna be ready to go. So you just want some flour onto a floured surface, and then you wanna kind of knead this guy just a little bit more. How you divide it is going to depend on how big you want your baos, but for me, I kind of like it small, medium size-ish, so I can divide this mixture up into about 24 different parts. So I'm just forming these guys into logs to make the division just a little bit easier. So once you have your dough to the desired size, it's onwards to forming. So after you finish cutting it, some of you might have let the dough rest just a little bit more. In order to get the bread to have kind of the indentations that you want, you really need to work it. This is a bread dough, so just don't worry about overworking it. Add a little bit more flour if it's going to be too wet, okay? So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna form a circle with each of my circles. So I've formed kind of a circle, I've squished it down, and then I'm just using that kind of technique where I roll the outer edges and then sooner or later it forms a circle with the center being just slightly thicker, which is good because that's the part that's going to hold all of the filling. So I'm going to hold it like this, kind of like a cone, and just putting it on top of my fingers. And then I'm going to take kind of like a 2 tablespoon scoop, and then I'm just going to try to get everything in the center. If it's not in the center, make sure to kind of like push it that way because sometimes things can fall out. Okay, so here go the folding technique. So it really starts off with very well kneaded dough, or else your indentations are not going to stay and it's going to be a too relaxed dough and turn into one big blob, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to continually kind of turn the bow, and then every time I turn the bow, it kind of makes like a natural crease, and it is there that I'm going to be pinching. So I'm kind of making little folds and then using kind of my other hand and the finger to squish the filling down below. If what you can't see is I'm actually pinching very closely to the top, because if you pinch on the sides, like if you fold and you pinch on the sides, those indentations are not going to be prevalent. Those indentations are just going to be, you're going to have one big blob, okay? And then towards the end, you just kind of want to pinch, but then also stick your thumb in the center so that a little bit of that filling is showing, so that it looks nice and pretty like that. After which you just want to put it on some parchment paper and then let that dough rest, because it'll continue kind of rising up some more. So I'm going to do this process over again. So I would say that the circle is about 4 inches or so in diameter. Same thing goes, you want to just kind of put it into that like cone shape and then put the filling in the center, and it really helps to have flat filling. So, you know, have that spoon and then have that help you push it down. So back to the fold. This is what I'm trying to say, is don't pinch on the sides like that. You want to pinch towards the top, because if you pinch towards the side, it just becomes one big like fan blob. It doesn't work. The indentations will not show. So you want to kind of be folding it just really ever so slightly on the top. You are not folding at the sides at all, and you can see that as I turn the dumpling, because I'm holding my finger there, a fold naturally happens, and some of the filling is bound to fall out, so you know, use your other thumb and then kind of push that filling in, and just continue turning and it will continue folding, but just pinch on the top and not the sides, so that you get kind of the indentations and not just one big blob. So, you know, the final is just, you know, continue pinching and then stick your thumb in and twist some more, and you should get something like this. It does require practice, so, you know, don't be sad if it doesn't come out, you know, pretty cool looking the first time. So you just want to put a cover on it for about 30 minutes or so that you let the dough rest, and then also it has time to expand a little bit more so that it gets nice and fluffy when you're finally ready to cook it. So this is going to be the steamer on high or medium high. You really want a lot of heat and steam to kind of permeate those baos right away. So put a cover on it, again, maybe about medium high heat, and then 12 to 15 minutes, these guys should be ready to go. Alrighty, time for unveiling. So these, oh my gosh, they look so good. They actually puffed up a little bit more than I thought, so I would just kind of recommend spacing them out a little bit more, but I ended up making another batch, and then that worked really well. But look at how good these guys look. And they are really best right out of the steamer like this. Like, you let it cool, the baos kind of get a little bit harder, and then the best way to reheat this, if you're gonna freeze it or eat it at a later time, is to actually steam it for a couple minutes again, and that's when it's super good. Anyways guys, that's it for this recipe. You guys have to try it. These vegetarian baos are so good. Like, they're meaty with like the mushroom and the tofu, but it's also amazing with, you know, the different flavors like soy sauce and sesame oil and whatnot. And I've actually seen people fill it with different types of fillings. Like, some people use carrots and mushrooms, some people use spinach and mushrooms, some people use all chives. So it's really whatever flavors that you want in there. As usual, if you want to see more recipes like this, remember to hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you guys again next time. Bye!